A tenant committed fraud in order to get $11,000 in rent relief by using a landlord's name when she didn't even live in one of his properties. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over the whole rental assistance program nonsense, okay? Now, I've covered stories about rental assistance programs and how tenants are getting the rent relief payments and how they're not using that money to actually pay the landlords what they are owed. And so the landlords are getting screwed by it. I've also covered stories about how landlords have tried to apply for these rental assistance programs but have had no help from tenants and therefore got nothing. Okay, now this stuff, it's personal to me because, as I mentioned before, I actually got some of the rent relief from one of my tenants who wasn't paying rent, supposedly because of hardship due to the pandemic. Now, I don't know if that was true or not, but I was glad to get that money. So when landlords are getting these rental assistance payments, they actually do need it, okay? And they shouldn't ever have this money paid directly to tenants. It should come directly to landlords. And unfortunately, a lot of these cities and municipalities, they're not doing that. They're sending the money to the tenants, and then they act all surprised when the tenant doesn't pay the landlord. Well, hey, you're setting the system up and making it so that it is easy to commit fraud. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Now, this story is a little bit different. I'm going to get into the details of the story in just a minute. But before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you want to see on this channel. I'm still working to bring you great videos about eviction law, about anything left with the eviction moratoriums, the rental assistance programs, good cause eviction laws, rent control, anything that might be of interest to landlords. I have to bring you this news because there's nobody else out here doing it. And if I wasn't bringing it to you, there's 1,000 stories that you wouldn't even see. So this article is coming from turn210.com, and it says, "On your dime, Rhode Island woman allegedly commits fraud to get $11,000 rent relief check." Yeah, this landlord, their identity essentially, or their name got stolen in order to get this rent relief payment. And, it's a mess. But let me get into this article and get the exact details for you. A Rhode Island man is demanding accountability after he says a woman wrongly listed him as her landlord to cash in on an $11,000 rent relief check. "The worst part is it seems like the state just doesn't care," Mark Nickel of Westerly said. Rent Relief RI is a pandemic relief program run by RI Housing that uses federal tax money to help landlords and tenants who've fallen behind on rent. As the I team has previously reported, the money hasn't always ended up in the right hands. Some tenants have failed to pay their landlords after getting rent relief money directly through RI Housing, a violation of the agreement they sign when entering the program. Yeah, so they think that by them signing the agreement, then, that'll make sure that they pay the landlord. No. It won't, okay? There's a lot of dishonest people out there, and there's a lot of people out there who, when they see that large sum of money, they just say to themselves, hey, I need money right now. I'm going to take this. Not only did they get to live there for free, which is, like thousands of dollars worth of a bonus, but then you're going to pay them cash on top of that. And the landlord gets nothing, when in the end, the truth of the matter is that the landlord is the only one who is suffering financially through all of this. So the rent relief program should have been set up from the very beginning just to pay the landlord directly. Fortunately, that's the way it is here in Nebraska, but I guess it's not that way up in Rhode Island. But let's keep going. Nichols said a woman who listed his name on her application lied about being his tenant. "I was very surprised she had gotten any money from rent relief because I've had multiple other cases and there's a lot of paperwork involved," he said. "And for them to pay her without ever contacting me, I was quite surprised." RI Housing reportedly did try to contact him, but Nichols said the email and phone number provided by the scam artist were incorrect. "I don't think they tried very hard because when the third person I talked to punched my name into the system, Everything popped right up with the correct address, correct email, correct telephone number, Nichols said. Yeah, don't expect for bureaucrats to even try for 1 second to verify any of the information in there, okay? They are too lazy. They're not going to do things right. I mean, we're talking about the government here. So they thought that, hey, we're going to pay this money direct. She's in need. She needs the money. So it doesn't bother a lot of people to commit this sort of fraud. They think they're not going to get caught. And in this case, they did. So my question is the state of Rhode Island, are they actually going to go after this lady for, for basically committing fraud? Because they should. They really should. Now, the fact that the lady filled out all the paperwork and all the information and everything and was probably all false, all fake, and nobody verified it, it shouldn't surprise anybody. It doesn't surprise me. The whole rental assistance program thing was nonsense from the get-go. And, it was a necessary thing back when, hey, the pandemic was in its early stages, and then they had these, eviction protections in place. But guess what? We're 2 years beyond that now. We're more than 2 years beyond that, okay? This all started in March of 2020. Well, it's May of 2022 right now. We are 2 years and 2 months beyond the beginning of the pandemic and all the restrictions and lockdowns and, stay-at-home orders and all that nonsense, okay? The economy has come back. Unfortunately now we're suffering different problems with the economy, but overall the economy has come back. People have been allowed to go back to work. So this stuff has to end. We cannot have people who are dependent upon rental assistance for the rest of eternity. Okay? So even the rental assistance programs, even though I personally benefited from it, I believe that they need to end. Otherwise, you're going to be discouraging people from going back to work. You're going to be discouraging landlords from finding good tenants for their properties because they think they're going to get checks from the government. Okay? It's not good for landlords either. Okay? We need to have a regular economy. We need to get back to normal. If the tenant isn't paying you, we need to evict them and get a tenant in your property who is paying. We don't need to be begging the government for more money. Okay, I would rather the government have not paid me the rental assistance money and instead me just getting that tenant out of my unit and getting a tenant in my unit who could pay. Okay, that's what I would rather have had. Even if it meant me losing thousands of dollars, because now I'm stuck in this position where, hey, I've got this tenant in there who wasn't able to pay rent, who is dependent upon this rental assistance. Well, how are they going to pay rent going into the future? I don't think they were going to be able to, so I might still have to go through the eviction process. See, this is the problem you create when you become reliant upon the government, okay? RI Housing responds. The I-Team went straight to RI Housing for answers. Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer Christine Hunsinger couldn't speak on the individual case, but did talk about the overall security of the program. When asked whether she has heard of any cases where a tenant lied about where they lived, she responded, "I'm sure there is a way to outsmart the system. How people go about doing that, I'm not sure." Yeah, that sounds like a typical answer. You know what? Now that you mention it, there probably is a way to outsmart the system. Well, yeah, that's because you created a crappy system that was so flawed that anybody could take advantage of it and commit this kind of fraud. And obviously, more than one person already has. Rent Relief RI does require the tenant to verify their address through an ID, utility bill, or mail, but that's not always foolproof. She said in some cases, tenants move around. Mostly the discrepancy about where someone lives has to do with when they stopped living one place and moved to another place, Hunsinger said. I'm not aware of someone saying that they resided in a unit and never lived there. Well, now she should be aware because that's exactly what happened in this case, okay? Hunsinger also said while it would be rare for RI Housing to approve an application for a tenant where all the landlord's contact information wasn't working, she admitted with such a large federal program, it's possible a case could fall through the cracks. Are you going to find a handful in there? Probably, Hunsinger said, but I think for the vast majority of the people using this program, it's doing what it was designed to do. Yeah, it might be doing what it was designed to do, but even the initial goal of the program is flawed. Okay, the whole thing is flawed. We need to end this, and we need to end it as soon as possible. So my only question, I'm going to look down in the article, is, you know, are they going after this person who committed this fraud? Because if they're not, the only thing they're doing is encouraging more people to commit more fraud. Okay, they need to go after this person. They need to throw the book at them. They need to convict them. They have all their name. They have their information. They know who they sent the check to. Or they'd be out of their minds not to do this. You know, I mean, the whole thing, you know, and I don't see anything in here. You know, maybe they are going after them. Maybe they're not. But I don't see anything in this article, as for now, saying that that's what's going to happen. So, yeah, it looks like overall the landlord, you know, had their name used on an application that was fraudulent. And you know what? The last thing I want to see happen, and this is why it bothers me, is they could go back to that landlord and say, hey, you know, you committed the fraud. Okay? You know, took this $11,000 when the landlord didn't do that. Okay, it was this person over here. So that's why they have to go, and they have to go get, you know, this person, charge them with the crime, and get that money back, because there's no reason for landlords to be put in that type of situation where they could be accused of doing something that they didn't do.